Here's something most Americans don't want to hear. While we're busy arguing about politics on social media, 10 entire states are quietly circling the drain. We're not talking about minor budget hiccups or temporary population dips. We're talking about economic death spirals that could fundamentally reshape America by 2028. The data is alarming, the trends are undeniable, and if you live in one of these states, you might want to start paying attention. Stick with me on this video as I explore 10 states where things are not looking bright. The numbers look grim, to say the least. Number 10. Vermont, the picturesque state that nobody can afford to live in. Vermont isn't collapsing dramatically. It's slowly fading away, like a Polaroid left in the sun. It's the only state actually experiencing population decline year over year, losing approximately 193 residents annually. That might not sound catastrophic until you realize Vermont only has about 647,000 people to begin with. The state scored a dismal 144 out of 350 points in CNBC's economy rankings published last year. The state has no major corporations headquartered within its borders, not one. 0 Fortune 500 companies call the Green Mountain State home. This isn't just unfortunate, it's economically devastating. Without corporate anchors, Vermont struggles with lackluster growth, troubling pension obligations, and flat tax revenues. Vermont's median household income sits around $67,000, but housing affordability continues to deteriorate. The state's population is aging rapidly, with younger residents fleeing for opportunities elsewhere. When your scenic beauty is literally your only selling point, you're in trouble. Though Vermont promises to improve the economy, make itself more affordable, and protect the most vulnerable, it's easier said than done, especially when you can't attract workers and have no significant industry to offer them. Number 9. Colorado, the gold rush that's lost its luster. Hold on to your hiking boots. Colorado's net migration has plummeted by nearly 53% in the past 10 years. Nearly 40,000 fewer people moved to Colorado in 2025 compared to previous years. The Denver metropolitan area has seen a staggering 66% fewer people move there over the last decade. So what's going wrong? Rising costs and reduced affordability have turned the Centennial State into an unattainable dream for most Americans. Denver County's unemployment rate hit 4.6% in May this year, above the national average of 4.2%. Job growth is projected at a measly 1.2%. Colorado has become unaffordable for the very people who made it great. The state's aging population is another ticking time bomb. By 2030, approximately 40,000 people will retire annually, shrinking the workforce and increasing the strain on public services. The state's labor force participation is declining, while retirees are increasing. This creates a vicious cycle. Fewer workers mean less tax revenue, which means worse services, which drives away more working-age residents. It's economic entropy in action. Number 8. Rhode Island, small state, big problems. The ocean state's economy grew solidly last year, but that hasn't inspired confidence among investors and entrepreneurs. Rhode Island's economic performance remains weak, with limited diversification and heavy reliance on a few key sectors. At present, the state suffers from near stagnation, with forecasters predicting minimal growth. The state's small size, which once seemed charming, now feels claustrophobic as businesses seek greener pastures with lower costs and better infrastructure. When economists describe your growth as not inspiring a ton of confidence, you know you're in trouble. Rhode Island is caught in a trap. Too small to attract major corporations, too expensive for small businesses to thrive. Number 7. Arkansas, the poverty trap. The poverty rate in Arkansas stands at 14.7% as we speak. The median household income is $50,540, which is the second lowest nationally. Arkansas ranks 48th among U.S. states for economic performance. Nearly 22% of the state's children live in poverty. The state's obesity rate is 37.4%, third highest nationally, and life expectancy is among the lowest in the nation. Arkansas faces a brutal combination: low wages, limited opportunities, and minimal R&D investment hampering economic growth prospects. The state has the fourth highest incarceration rate, with 586 of every 100,000 people imprisoned. Low educational attainment perpetuates the poverty cycle. When your population lacks skills, you can't attract good-paying jobs. When you can't attract good-paying jobs, people don't invest in education. High rates of poverty and economic hardship, coupled with low levels of educational attainment, contribute to high crime rates, creating a self-reinforcing cycle that's nearly impossible to break without massive intervention. Number 6. Alaska. When the oil runs out, so does everything else. Alaska's crude oil production has fallen from over 2 million barrels per day in the late 1980s to approximately 466,600 barrels per day at present. Oil prices dropped 30% from $105 in March 2014 to $72.50 until March this year. The state's unrestricted oil revenues are expected to be just $2.1 billion for the current fiscal, down from $3.1 billion last year. Alaska bet everything on oil, and now the roulette wheel has stopped spinning. The state's budget relies on oil revenues for nearly 40% of its general-purpose revenue, but production and prices are both declining. The famous permanent fund dividend dropped to just $1,000 in the current year, the lowest inflation-adjusted amount ever, down 41% from the last year. The state lawmakers only budgeted $40 million of the nearly $800 million that districts say is needed to fix crumbling schools. Governor Dunleavy then vetoed more than a third of that. Some rural schools have been begging for nearly 2 decades to fix leaky roofs, with parts of buildings now on the verge of collapse. As job opportunities in oil disappear and the cost of living remains astronomical, Alaskans are leaving. The state has lost its working-age population while the number of retirees increases, creating an unsustainable burden on remaining workers. Number 5. New York, the Empire State's not-so-subtle decline. New York experienced the nation's largest numeric population decline in 2023. Between 2020 and 2021 alone, the state saw a 1.58% decrease. New York City bore the brunt, losing 77,000 residents in a single year. The state's population fell by 0.61% between July 2023 and June last year. The equation is simple. Insanely high cost of living plus heavy tax burden plus harsh winters equals mass exodus. While international immigration helps offset some losses, it can't keep pace with the domestic evacuation. New York has some of the nation's most expensive housing, particularly in the NYC metro area. The median household income increased only 0.09% recently, barely growing despite the city's international appeal. Property taxes in New York are crushing, and the state's overall tax burden is among the highest in America. The state loses political power through congressional reapportionment. New York has already lost House seats after the 2020 census. Less representation means less federal funding, creating another vicious cycle. Number 4. California. The Golden State turns to lead. California's median home price hit $905,680 in Q2 this year. To qualify for a mortgage on a mid-tier home, you need an annual income of $237,000, over 2 times the median California household income of $96,500. Monthly mortgage payments for a mid-tier home are $5,900, an 82% increase in the last semi-decade. California has the most severe housing crisis in America. Mid-tier California homes are now more than twice as expensive as the typical mid-tier U.S. home. Between 2000 and 2020, California experienced a net loss of 2.6 million residents to other states. The state faces a combination of crushing housing costs, high taxes, homelessness crisis, wildfire risks, drought, earthquake concerns, and rising insurance costs. Home insurance costs have been rising dramatically due to wildfire risk, making homeownership even more unattainable. But here's the irony. California still has a sizable natural increase, more births than deaths, and gained about 151,000 people through international immigration in 2022 to 2023. But these gains are wiped out by an enormous net domestic outmigration of 338,000 people. This means the people who built California are leaving, while the state becomes increasingly unaffordable for anyone without a tech salary. Number 3. West Virginia, America's forgotten state. Until May this year, West Virginia lost more jobs in the last 12 months than any other state. Employment dropped from 726,400 to 717,000 full-time positions. The state has the second lowest life expectancy in the country at 74.5 years. Only 55% of West Virginia's adult population is either working or looking for work. The second lowest labor force participation rate among all 50 states. West Virginia's reliance on coal mining has become a death sentence as energy production shifts away from fossil fuels. Per capita personal income ranks 49th among the 50 states at 77% of the national average. The state faces over 17,000 federal jobs at risk, 2.5% of the workforce, from potential government cuts. Nearly a third of West Virginia's roads are in poor condition. The state receives a D grade from Infrastructure Report Card, signifying systems at risk with many elements reaching the end of their service life. West Virginians have the lowest level of higher education attainment in the nation, with only 23.1% holding a bachelor's degree or higher. This creates an impossible situation. You can't attract good jobs without educated workers, and educated workers leave because there are no good jobs. Number 2. Mississippi, last in almost everything that matters. Mississippi has the highest poverty rate of 18.8% in the country, with the lowest median household income of $59,127. The child poverty rate stands at 27.9%, highest nationally. And if this is not enough, Mississippi has the lowest average income in America and the second lowest percentage of people employed. The state's per capita income is $25,300, dead last nationally. The state has unemployment and food insecurity levels that are the worst in the country. Mississippi ranked last in CNBC's state economy rankings last year, with a score of 90 out of 350 points, an F grade. The state shows minimal entrepreneurial activity, has the lowest median household income, and suffers from high poverty rates. Mississippi's education system ranks last in the nation. EdWeek Research Center ranked the state's public schools the worst in the country. Educational attainment levels are among the lowest in the U.S., with about 85.3% of adults graduating high school and only 22% having at least a bachelor's degree. Talking about health, Mississippi has the country's highest obesity rate at 40.8% and the lowest life expectancy of 74.4 years. 15% of residents are food insecure. 45.3% of the state's workforce earns less than $15 per hour, with the minimum wage stuck at $7.25, requiring someone to work 86 hours per week to afford a modest two-bedroom apartment. About 80% of the state's workforce, 1 million workers, do not have paid leave. Mississippi faces a perfect storm of low wages, poor education, terrible health outcomes, and lack of economic opportunity. The state can't attract investment because it lacks skilled workers. It can't develop skilled workers because people with education leave for better opportunities. The cycle is self-perpetuating and accelerating. Number 1. Louisiana. Louisiana ranks as the worst state economy in America for 2025 with a score of 188 out of 445 points. D grade. The state ranks dead last in the U.S. and World News ranking and has held this position since 2017. Louisiana has the nation's highest homicide rate with 15.8 murders per 100,000 people and the highest incarceration rate with 680 incarcerated individuals per 100,000 residents. Let's start with the insurance apocalypse. Louisiana homeowners' insurance rates increased by an average of 6% last year. By the end of this year, the average premium is projected to reach $13,937, up 27% from last year. That's almost 5 to 6 times more than the average American pays for home insurance. Louisiana has the highest rate of underwater mortgages in America at nearly 11%, meaning homeowners owe more on their mortgages than their homes are worth. New homes are unaffordable to 85.4% of the population, 40th nationally. The state's GDP per capita is just $71,292, which is 37th in the nation. The state banked only 8.6% of spending in government reserves last year. Just 11.7% of the state's unemployed populace is covered by unemployment insurance. The unemployment rate is 4.4%, and the state struggles with high unemployment rates and low median household income. The state ranks last in opportunity and education among U.S. states. The state has the nation's highest incarceration rate and highest homicide rate, creating a terrifying environment that drives away investment and talent. Louisiana's median household income is $50,935, third lowest in the nation. The poverty rate is 17.4%, second highest. Child poverty affects 26.8% of Louisiana's children, second highest rate. Educational attainment is abysmal, with only 27.2% holding a bachelor's degree or higher. Louisiana combines the worst elements of every crisis facing American states: natural disaster vulnerability, insurance market collapse, government insolvency, high crime, poor education, massive unemployment, and people fleeing en masse. The state isn't just struggling, it's in a multi-system failure that's accelerating. And here's the bonus entry: Illinois, that deserves special mention. Look, I only promised 10 states, but I'd be criminally negligent not to mention Illinois. The land of Lincoln has a pension crisis so catastrophic that it makes every other state on this list look fiscally responsible. Illinois had $143.7 billion in unfunded pension liabilities last year, the worst-funded pension system in America, with a ratio of just 46%. The state owes nearly $16,000 per capita in unfunded state and local pension liabilities, the highest in the nation. Taxpayer contributions to state pension systems have grown nearly 20-fold, from $614 million in fiscal 1996 to $11.2 billion in the current fiscal. Illinois has the worst credit rating of any state, according to Moody's. Despite 9 consecutive credit rating upgrades, the state still faces more than $140 billion in unfunded pension liabilities. The funded ratio across all 5 state systems is just 44%, meaning Illinois only holds 44 cents for every dollar owed. Illinois' unfunded pension liabilities make up 19.02% of the state's GDP. Nearly 1/5 of everything produced in the state would be required just to erase the shortfall. That's the highest percentage in the nation, and it's growing. So what does this mean? Illinois can't pay its promises. Simple as that. The state is functionally insolvent, limping along by hoping future investment returns will magically solve decades of political cowardice and financial mismanagement. Now that we have explored these states, let's discuss what 2028 will look like if nothing changes. If current trends continue, expect a demographic earthquake. Louisiana could lose another 50,000+ residents through domestic migration. California and New York will continue bleeding middle-class families to Texas, Florida, North Carolina, and Tennessee. West Virginia's population could drop below 1.7 million. Vermont might become America's first state to hit a negative population growth death spiral. Louisiana's insurance crisis will reach a breaking point by 2027. Either the federal government steps in with a bailout, hello, moral hazard, or large swaths of the state become effectively uninsurable and therefore unmortgageable. California's housing affordability will worsen to the point where only the top 10% of earners can afford median homes. Expect median home prices to exceed $1 million in major metros. Illinois will face its toughest moment between 2028 and 2030, when pension obligations consume an ever larger share of the budget, forcing painful choices: slash services, raise taxes dramatically, or effectively default on pension promises. Other states with pension problems, looking at you, Alaska, will face similar reckonings. West Virginia's roads, already among the worst in America, will deteriorate further without massive investment. Alaska's rural schools will continue to crumble. Literally, the costs of deferred maintenance will compound, making eventual repairs exponentially more expensive. Mississippi, Arkansas, West Virginia, and Louisiana will fall further behind as educated workers continue fleeing for opportunity elsewhere. Without human capital, These states cannot attract investment. Without investment, they cannot develop human capital. The doom loop accelerates. As tax bases shrink and costs rise, state governments will face impossible choices: healthcare, education, infrastructure. Something has to give. In states like Louisiana and Mississippi, we're likely to see further deterioration in already abysmal public services. By 2027 to 2028, Congress will face a stark choice: bail out failing states or watch them spiral into dysfunction that threatens the broader economy. The politics will be toxic. Why should taxpayers in Texas subsidize Louisiana's insurance crisis or Illinois' pension disaster? But the alternative, allowing states to effectively fail, is unprecedented in modern America. The states that succeed, think Sunbelt states, tech hubs, low-tax havens, will pull further ahead. The states that fail will become economic wastelands, home only to those too poor to leave, and the retirees who can't sell their homes. America will become a tale of two nations, divided not just by politics, but by fundamental economic viability. The numbers that we have discussed aren't some raw predictions. They're projections based on actual data and trends. The warning signs are clearly flashing red. The question is whether anyone's paying attention. Most of these states share common themes: aging populations, shrinking tax bases, infrastructure decay, education failures, and young people fleeing for opportunities elsewhere. And once these trends reach critical mass, they become self-reinforcing. Because success breeds success, and failure breeds failure. By 2028, some of these states will have turned the corner through dramatic reforms and difficult choices. Others will be in free fall, trapped in death spirals they lack the political will or fiscal capacity to escape. The disturbing reality is that these problems appear as clear as a crystal, but we simply don't want to see them. Forget about being a savior. So do you want to know if your state is on the brink? Drop a comment below and let's talk about the warning signs in your backyard. And if you found this analysis eye-opening, share it with someone who needs to see it. They'll thank you later, probably from their new address in a state that actually has its act together.